There's a saying in prison, though, that says you can do the time or you can let the time do you. I think ultimately I made the decision to do the time. I walk into gym one day and this guy comes up to me and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "man, don't let these people beat you." He goes, "It's all they want to do is they want to take everything from you. Don't let them beat you. Don't let your ex-wife beat you. Don't let these guards beat you. Don't let the system beat you." They go, "They might have taken all the apartments you owned, all the money you had, the cars you drove, the house you lived in, but they can't take what you got inside."
Hi, and welcome to the Micro Empires Podcast, where we learn how to build small empires for wealth and security, because you don't have to be wealthy to build wealth. I'm Jennifer Grimson. I'm your host. Let's get started. Prison is what had to happen. That's what my guest Mike Morawski told me. Prison is where he learned who his friends were, who had his back, but most importantly, what he was going to do with all of that time. And today we continue the conversation with Mike, who was a one-time real estate mogul who ended up with a 10-year federal prison sentence. If you haven't listened to part one, please go back and do that now. It'll make so much more sense. So let's pick up where we left off last time.
"Why, are you going to jail?"
Whoa. Oh my God.
Dead in my tracks, I stop.
Yeah.
And I go, "I am."
Oh my God.
And she was like, so she never took our daughter to school. We sat on the stairs for 4 hours. I had my head in her lap and sobbed uncontrollably.
Yep.
And told her the whole story. Well, the next day we were in my attorney's office. This was an attorney I paid, I want to say I gave him a $35,000 retainer.
Yeah.
Met with him twice, and he walked me across the street to the federal defender's office. That's how fast the money went.
Yeah.
And so for the next 2 years, I kind of mitigated through it. I wound up in front of a magistrate in May of 2011 being indicted. That's where they read the indictment. We had to turn ourselves in. They took us in, read the indictment. And the next 2 years was hell. So we left court that day, and I said to her, I said, "Look, we have a choice." I said, "I can give you an envelope with some money in it, but you're going to burn through it in a couple of years and have to go get a job. Or I can build a business that hopefully you'll run and be able to keep you and the kids in the house." So I built a property management company over 2 years that she still runs and operates today.
So for those 2 years, when you're talking about mitigation for folks who may not know anything about the legal process, it's literally you're just going through the court process. You're trying to delay, drag it out, negotiate, whatever, but you're also building another business for her to keep her afloat.
Right.
So that's really interesting. So you do that for 2 years and then the sentencing comes, correct?
Yeah, then I get sentenced, right.
And you're sentenced to 10 years?
10 years.
Okay.
So it's kind of funny when you stand in front of the judge, right? And the judge goes 120 months and you go, Jesus, that's 10
what's that
years.
month? Yeah.
Yeah. And, and here's the point, so I'm standing there, the judge reading the sentencing requirements and he's getting to the point, and he says 120 months. And all I can hear is my wife and one of my daughters. I had two of my daughters in court. And one of my daughters go,
yeah.
And it was like they sucked all the air out of the room.
Yeah.
And everything just stopped and was surreal. I mean, it was the most unbelievable feeling I've ever experienced in my life.
So you had no idea the length of sentence you were facing, or did you think you would not get a sentence?
We did what's called a blind plea. So I went just kind of hoping for the best, because the government was trying for like 222 months.
Oh my gosh.
It was like 15 years, right? And so we're sitting in court that day, and my attorney reaches over and he writes the number 48 on a piece of paper. And he said, "That's what you're going to get."
48 months.
Right. Because of what was going on, what the judge was talking about. And we were stunned. So you do this sentencing hearing, right? Which normally takes 20 minutes, 40 minutes.
Right.
7.5 hours. I had a forensic accountant on the stand for 5.5 hours that proved that my loss was substantially less than what the government said it was, and proved it, beyond a doubt. And
so why do you think you were given that sentence? Why did the judge do that?
on one hand, he felt bad because I think he might have wanted to give more. On the other hand, I don't think he really knew what to do. So, there was a long pause during the whole thing, and him and probation went in the back and talked about me and the case and what I think they talked about. What I think part of it had to do with what my ex-partner was going to get.
Right.
And that there were some statutory guidelines that he had to get based on a point structure that the federal government uses.
Right.
And so they had to give me something beyond that. I don't know what to tell you,
And so this is just the first part of the story, right? So do you have adult children as well at this time?
I do. I have 5 children. So I have one that she was probably 30 at the time because she's going to be 40 this year.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'm really dating myself, aren't I?
So she was the one in the courtroom at that time?
Her and her sister.
Yeah.
She has a sister that lived with us from my second marriage. She was 14 at the time.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So you've got a 30-year-old, a 14-year-old, and little ones.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you get the sentence, you go off to jail, and your wife, who has said that she will wait for you 17 days into your sentence, leaves you, files for divorce. And I don't know what happened there, but I think it's very telling that you still talk about her as a good woman who had your back. And I don't know what her deciding factors were, but there was a lot of deceit. I mean, she was kept in the dark, and that's not fair. Even if we're trying to protect our loved ones, it's really not fair. But you go into prison looking at 10 years down the tube of 10 years, and your prison experience, I think the first time we talked on the phone, you said, this is what had to happen. So tell us about your first day. And then I'd love to know, was there a turning point for you in prison where you realized, I'm going to do something with this time. I'm going to make a difference.
Yeah. I think to answer the question about why she did what she did, just a short note is that self-preservation, I set her up pretty well financially.
Right.
But self-preservation, a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And so, I can't play that game though. I mean, it is what it is. And she's the mother of my kids. I care about her and would do anything for her. And, she knows it. So,
yeah. And I just want to I just think that's nice to point out. You recognize, it doesn't make her a bad human being, because when we talked the first time, I said, really, your whole family goes to prison when you go to prison. Your whole family does. And people suffer on the outside. So side note for listeners who don't know, I worked in correctional health for a while. So I've been inside of prisons and seen it. And the worst thing, as I told you when we talked, for me, was witnessing the lack of humanity. And federal prison, I don't think I've been inside a federal prison. I don't know if it's very different, but regardless, there's a lack of humanity that becomes normal. You normalize it while you're in there. And that is never a good thing for any human being.
Yeah, for sure. So my first day was interesting. My wife drives me to the airport and we say goodbye. And actually, I get out of the car and I walk into the airport and she comes running after me in the airport. And, don't go, let's leave, let's run. And I said, we can't do that now. I said, I needed 45 days. We had that conversation.
Right.
That was an option on the table early on.
Interesting. We'll have to talk about that.
That's a whole nother podcast, that story. So I get on a plane, and we're 15 minutes into a flight, and the pilot comes on and says, prepare for emergency landing.
Wow.
And I think, well, isn't this classic? He dies in a fiery crash. So I thought, wow, this is it. What a way to end this deal.
Right.
But wound up going back to the airport. They couldn't pressurize the cabin, so he couldn't get above 10,000 feet. And so I go back home. I get to spend that day, which is a Monday, with my family, with my kids. And we just hung out and had a really good experience.
Mm-hmm.
Me and three of my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to the prison and 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night, and they put me in the suicide watch room.
Right. Which
is an interesting place to be in. Not because I was suicidal, but because that was the only empty place, right? Mm-hmm. So what is that? It's a concrete bunker in the middle of the room that's got a little yoga pad on it, and they give you a blanket and a pillow and leave the light on. Mm-hmm. And so I laid there, never went to sleep, but I laid there wondering what the next several years were going to be like for me. And how did I get in this position? And how did I mess up so bad? And, and what was my family going to do?
Right.
How were my kids going to get, I was going to miss kids driving, kids graduating, kids' birthdays, kids turning 16, Christmases, New Year's, birthdays, graduate. Your life, you die when you go to prison, and your life goes on in front of you.
Yeah.
The life goes on, and you stay right where you were.
Right.
So, yeah, it was interesting. And then I got, put in general population the next day. And you'd be surprised. Prison's a funny place because people gather around and they go, come on, man, you're going to do this. You'll get through this. Right. I was a wreck. I was a wreck for 18 months. I cried every day, could barely find the sanity to move on. And prison's not a place you want to cry. Right. I would go find a corner upstairs in the chapel. I had a friend, he's still my friend today, and I had a friend that twice had to come and get me for 4 o'clock count. 4 o'clock count is something that happens nationally. And he had to come and get me and carry me back to the dorm because I was just couldn't function, right?
Yeah.
So it was bad when I went in, but then my wife said she was going to leave, and it got worse. I thought, when I first went in, I thought it can't get any worse than this. This is the bottom. This is it. Now it's just straight up from here. And then she said she was leaving, and it just wrecked me.
Yeah. That suicide room, I've seen that in prisons and in jails. And the one that I saw was a concrete room with a drain in the center of the floor. There's no toilet. There's no bathroom. It's a drain. Lights are kept on at all times. And with this particular prisoner, they're stripped naked because you can't have anything that they could potentially hurt themselves with. So that's when I talk about the lack of humanity. And, it's interesting because what working in the prisons and jails taught me was that, and from talking to people who are a lot smarter than me, prison is the punishment. It shouldn't be prison plus a beating, plus, all the things that happen to you that are degrading while you're in there. Then you get out, companies will not hire. You're looked down upon as a second-class citizen. If prison is truly the punishment and you've paid the price, people don't understand how extremely hard it is to start over. And then when you said, my life, I died, my life carried on without me, and I just stayed still. In truth, you go backwards because there's no internet. You're not able to, have a cell phone. You're not able to, I think that's how it is in all prisons, maybe not in yours. So you have to find a way ahead as the world is moving forward exponentially in technology, in growth, in social media, everything that changed while you were in there.
It's awful.
So you're in you're in prison at this point, but I think there's a couple stories you've already shared with me. I'd love for you to share with the audience as well. You meet somebody very pivotal pretty much on your first day, and I'm happy, for you to share that story. But I also think what you just shared, the fact that you cried every day for 18 months, you had to go hide that there was someone who went and found you and brought you for that 4:00 call. So it's that finding the kindness. And I think, not a lot of people will end up in prison who listen to this, but a lot of people will end up in their lives seeking kindness where they can't find it. They could be in a marriage where they don't have kindness. They can be, and COVID has underscored this. They could just be miserable. And we suffer in silence a lot. And I think, I don't know if you were searching it out, but we do have to search out those. And it's in the most unlikely places. Like, I'm sure there were people who abandoned you that you didn't expect, and people who saved you that you didn't expect. So maybe you could talk about that a little.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot there to unpack, right? So my wife said she was leaving. I was shipwrecked, and everybody around me knew it. And you go from, I lived a pretty modest life. I mean, my life never changed. I didn't buy big houses or big cars. I didn't fly private. I didn't have boats. I lived a modest life because I knew that when I sold, the whole goal was to sell this business, cash out, and go golfing with my wife,
right,
for the next 20 years. That was the goal. I never thought that this would happen, right? So you go from this modest upper middle class lifestyle to now stripped of everything, lost everything, to 3 green outfits, 5 pairs of underpants, living in a room with 3 men you don't know in a 2x5 locker.
Right.
And you wonder, what the hell happened to my life?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew there's a saying in prison, though, that says you can do the time or you can let the time do you.
Mm.
And I think ultimately I made the decision to do the time.
Mm-hmm.
I walk in the gym one day and this guy comes up to me and he goes, man, don't let these people beat you. He goes, it's all they want to do is they want to take everything from you. Don't let them beat you. Don't let your ex-wife beat you. Don't let these guards beat you. Don't let the system beat you. They might have taken all the apartments you owned, all the money you had, the cars you drove, the house you lived in, but they can't take what you got inside.
Right.
They can't take who you are that made you who you are to get you to where you were. You can go back and get it back. He goes, get that 10 years back.
Wow.
At this point, I was about 30 pounds overweight. And he said, you need to come in this gym and work out every day. Come to my class every day. And I did. From that point on, I was in the gym every afternoon at 3:00, worked out. Then I started working out twice a day, started losing weight, started to feel better. My self-confidence started to come back. I started to come back emotionally, mentally, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Decided I wanted to go to college. I'd never gone to college. And I said, maybe I should try and get a bachelor's degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote to 5 colleges. I wrote to Liberty, Adams, Wheaton, and Trinity. I wanted to get a bachelor's in theology. And then I wrote to a college called Shalom Bible College, a little podunk place in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
That a guy told me about. He said, write to them. They'll get back to you. I don't know when, but they'll get back to you. So within 30 days, those first 4 colleges got back to me. And I had 2 criteria, right? I needed a scholarship because I had no money.
Right.
So I needed it paid for. And I needed a correspondence course because you can't get on the computer. Right? There's no computer access, no internet access in prison.
So it's literally, they are mailing you the lessons. You are filling them out and mailing them back in.
Right.
Correct? And
Right.
someone has to read these, which is so foreign.
Right.
That this is how it could still be done.
Right. So what they do is they take part of your education, they take part of your world experience and things like that. And then I did 4 years of classes.
Wow.
But so here's what happened though. Those first 4 schools said, we don't have a correspondence course or we have no scholarships available at this time. And then a year to the day, I get a letter back from this Shalom Bible College that I got accepted. and fill this paperwork out and they'll send me my first semester.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started, and
Right.
that was 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished in like 2000, the end of 17, I finished.
Mm-hmm.
But I got while I was gone, I decided to do the time. So I worked out. I went to college. I got a bachelor's degree in theology. I wrote 2 books while I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
One called Exit Plan that we released last year, Your Complete Guide to Multifamily Investing and Why You Need an Exit Plan Before You Buy.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote an ethics course. I taught real estate. I taught ethics in prison for 5 years. I taught Bible studies. I was on an outreach program where I went into the community and I told my story to small business owners and the local area college students.
Mm-hmm.
And I befriended a professor from the University of Minnesota, and we co-authored a paper that we just had published in the Business Journal of Ethics, ethical case study.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot. I came home in better shape physically, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally than I had ever been in my life.
Right.
And, today I work on the finance piece. Isn't that what this show's about?
Yes. Yes, it is. Some people may think that podcasting is easy, but it's really not. It's all the back end stuff that someone like me doesn't know anything about that makes it very difficult to have a successful show. So how have I been able to do it? By partnering with Streamline Podcasts. They have made my life so incredibly easy. I get to focus on my great guests and content, and then I deliver the audio to them and they take it from there. They do all of the editing, all the music, all the show notes, all the socials, and I just get to sit back, and within 48 hours, I have all of my content delivered back to me. The best part is they make it really, really affordable. And believe me, I've looked at a lot of different options. So if you're interested in podcasting and want to use this great product, you can contact Streamline Podcasts and use the code MicroEmpires, all capitals, all one word, and you will get a discount. Happy podcasting. Now let's get back to the show. And, I think it's interesting that the theology track, the Bible group, the outreach group, and then ethics, which is going to be interesting for people. You taught an ethics course, you've written a paper on it, co-published it with a professor. And so why is your perspective different on that? Why is your take on ethics different than people who haven't gone to prison?
Because I spent a lot of time my whole life in the gray area.
Mm-hmm.
I walked in the gray box, not the black, not the white, but I walked in the gray box. And I made choices and decisions in my life based on the gray,
mm-hmm.
thinking it was okay and you weren't hurting anybody.
Right.
But I tell a story in one of the lessons in my ethics classes is this. So it's the end of the year and you send all your stuff to your tax accountant
right.
to do your taxes. And he calls a couple of weeks later and he says, hey, Jennifer, I'm doing your taxes. And I see that last year you have receipts for $750 that you spent in travel. But the IRS allows you to take $2,500 in travel and they'll never look at it.
Right.
What would you like to do?
It's very hard to say no to.
Yeah. So, I spent my life in the gray box. Heck,
Yeah.
I would have taken the $2,500. Hey, you know what? Don't take $2,500, Stan. Just take $2,000 and
Right.
We'll call it a day.
Right.
Thinking that I was doing the right thing.
Right.
So,
but it's not.
and there's a lot of things like that. We make choices and decisions. And my message is this, that as a company owner, as a man, as a woman who run an organization, a team,
mm-hmm.
middle management, you are faced with decisions every day that will affect the rest of your life.
Right.
And how we proceed and how we make those decisions, one bad decision and
Yep.
it changes like that.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being the CEO of GM, General Motors?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a situation a number of years ago where cars were blowing up when people were starting them.
Yeah, I remember.
So they did an insurance audit and they said, well, if somebody dies, it costs X amount of dollars to satisfy that lawsuit.
Right.
And we only have had this many happen out of this many cars produced. To recall all those cars and change that ignition switch is going to cost this. But if we go out 20 years, for the number of cars we produce with this ignition switch in it, it's a lot less expensive to pay the death benefits of all these people that die than it is to recall.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do, Mary Barr?
I don't want to buy that car.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how do you, as the CEO, okay, so as the CEO of the company, your responsibility is to the shareholder, not the stakeholder, right? Your responsibility is that me, as an investor in GM, that I make money.
Mm-hmm.
So your responsibility is to the shareholder. It's not to the stakeholder, not to the owner of the car, not to the family, not to the gas station pump. It's to the shareholder. How do you make a decision based on that? So, I mean, we would have a couple-hour discussion just on that case study.
Right.
And you'd be surprised at the thoughts and that people have.
Mm-hmm. And we've learned a lot. Yeah, you learn a lot about people in prison. That's for sure. You learn a lot about people when you've gone through this. And I think as a nation, anyway, we've learned a lot about each other during COVID. And not, at least for me, my experience has not been fantastic. I've learned a lot about my fellow human and fellow American and what they are and are not willing to forego for what they consider to be their personal liberty. I want to believe I am not, first of all, I'm not passing any ethics test because there's lots of gray that I do. There's lots of things that I've done wrong, that I keep doing wrong. I just try to be better every single day. But I want to believe I'm a person who would have hidden Jews in my attic in World War II. I want to believe that's who I am. I want to believe I'm a person who cares about my fellow man. And in that instance, the right thing to do is to replace all of the ignitions. You know, you can't, but that's why insurance companies have a price for an arm, for a leg, for a death, for a dismemberment. There's a price on each one of those items. But let's get up to modern day. You are released last year. You're released into COVID, correct? So you get out and welcome to another prison. And tell us what the last year has been like and what you're working on now.
Wow. So when I look back, and we have a mutual friend today, Augie.
Yes.
Augie will tell you, I can't believe what you've done in 10 months.
Yeah.
8 months, right? But when I look back, and I've been home about a year now.
Mm-hmm.
And I got released. I went to the halfway house. I was there 2 weeks and going crazy. I had to do something. Started a Bible study that virtually, right? That's still going on today. It's about 12, 15, 20 guys that are on and off, and really built a solid group of men, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I am building a coaching and training business. Mm-hmm. I am I want to give back. I've got a lot of knowledge. While I was gone, I wrote a couple books. I wrote some home study courses. I put a ton of material together. And now I just, I teach that. And I work with multifamily investors, people coming into the real estate investing space, discovering that multifamily is the place to be. Right. The real estate professional, the agent, the auxiliary person that helps those people do business, right? So I coach and train. So life's different today, right? Mm-hmm. So for the last, for 11 months, 10 months of being home, I was still on home confinement. Right. So it's like being locked up, right? Mm-hmm. But it was interesting because the whole world was locked up.
Isn't that crazy?
Everybody's on Zoom. Who would have thought, man, I should have come home, bought some Zoom stock, right?
Right. Oh, God, me too. Oh, my God. God, I wish I'd done that. Well, I think it's really an interesting take. And you and I have talked about this offline. And I talked to Augie about it as well, who's also going to be on the show. But, people go to prison, and especially in federal prison, and especially at white collar crime. They come out of that prison and perhaps they no longer have their license. Perhaps they're having a difficult time getting hired. There's a lot of things that happen. They have not lost their skill. It's their basic skill. They've lost trust or credibility, et cetera, which is harder to build back than skill. But that's one of the things that I'm interested in doing because, we have over 2 million people in prison, incarcerated right now, prisons and jail, which is crazy. Our country is only 5% of the world's population, but 20% of the world's population are in our prisons and jails. That's crazy. I mean, the system is broken. We're not fixing it anytime soon. But what we don't need to do is to make it so hard to rebuild. And we do make it very, very hard to rebuild. But I really think that your story and your experience is very strong. But what you went through, I know you don't keep it a secret, you don't bury it or anything, but it is the thing that differentiates you. It is the thing that draws people to you because you have been humbled. You've seen what it's done to your family, not just to you. And I think that and living in the gray area, and those of us, I'll include myself, thinking it's okay to do that. And it's not. I'm not writing an ethics course anytime soon, but it's not a great place to live.
It makes you think, right? It makes you think about choices and decisions that you make.
Mm-hmm.
Is this right? Is this wrong? I always, I thought the word integrity was a word to use in your life. And I always thought that, but boy, I walked that gray area a lot.
Yeah.
And, I always thought, hey, as long as I don't hurt anybody, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not hurting anybody. Hey, to take that whole $2,500 tax deduction, it's not hurting anybody.
Right.
But is it right?
Right.
Just because it's, so here's the big thing about ethics, right? Is just because you act unethically doesn't mean you break the law.
Right.
But enough unethical actions will cause you to break the law.
Right. Wow. That's true. That's very true.
So,
and yeah, I just talked about this today on a show. I'm in the process of bringing in investors myself for coupling them with operators that I trust. And I'm not going to suggest any investment deals that I don't invest in myself. And I am much more concerned that the primary objective is that anybody that I bring in does well. And there can't be any gray area for me. I don't think it's because I'm such a great person or I have such high ethics. I think it's because I just can't sleep at night. And I'm selfish that way. Like I don't want to occupy any part of my brain worrying about, have I done the right thing by somebody? But I think those ethics questions are very, very important because we don't think about it. I don't think about it every day. I don't think about the little things. And it's really hard to kind of live that way. But I appreciate you being so honest about everything. I mean, I know a lot of this stuff is hard to talk about. It's very personal. And I think a lot of folks talk to you a lot about real estate and all of that. And we only brushed on that. But it is what makes you different from other people who've done similar work, but didn't have the experience that you've had.
Yeah. I think the experience has got a lot to be said for it, And all that happened and it's part of my story and my history, but it's made me who I am today. My mom tells this story that she asked my son, he's 16 today. He was probably 14 when she asked him. So a couple years ago, maybe a little more than that. Hey, what's different about your dad today? And my son said he's more humble.
Ooh, that's nice.
That's a huge thing. I mean, coming from, your son at 13, 14 years old who notices something like that, I was really grateful for that comment,
Yeah.
So
that's really important. Tell us how to reach you. You have your own podcast. You're out there on socials. I mean, you've learned all this in 10 months, but what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, boy, that's been a transition. You know what? You can email me, mike@mycoreintentions.com.
Okay.
The other thing is too, I said I wrote the book Exit Plan. If people want to read it, they can go get an ebook, free download. at mycoreintentions.com/exit plan and get a copy for themselves there. I am a huge networker. I love talking to people. I love meeting people. If somebody needs something, please reach out. If you're stuck, if you're sitting in a place that, you need some guidance, call me.
Yeah.
Open a conversation. And my podcast is Insider Secrets. That is all, I do two podcasts. One is Insider Secrets. That's a personal interview with someone around multifamily or entrepreneur. You're going to be on that. You'll be on that show coming up here soon. So, and then the one on Saturday we do is called Multifamily Unplugged. And I do this with a friend of mine. Between the two of us, we have about 50 years of real estate experience, but we go live on Facebook, live on Clubhouse. We're live on Zoom, and we bring a guest on, and we just talk about whatever comes up.
Oh, that's great.
In the headlines, we talk about multifamily, whatever the guest does, we talk about that. And then my partner is invariably out late on Friday night, and we talk about his antics.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you guys have a club, or you just have a room that you do on Clubhouse? Because I'm loving Clubhouse. It's a great platform for what you're doing. I love that.
Yeah. So on Saturday morning when we go live on Clubhouse, I just usually start a room.
Okay.
I'll name it. It's called Multifamily Unplugged, but I set it up a couple days in advance. I think that we just got our club approved, Julie and I. So I'm going to set that up, and then I'll put this other room under that. But that'll be the Entrepreneur Exchange. That's the one that we do on Tuesdays. So yeah, I'm all over social media, and like me, love me, whatever,
Yeah, that's really great. And I'll look forward to seeing you there. I just looked you up at Clubhouse. I'm already following you there, but that's one of my new favorites now. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time. This is probably going to be more than one episode. But again, I just appreciate you being so transparent. A lot of folks wouldn't want to talk about it, even if they could look it up on the internet. And I think it's a fresh perspective. So I really appreciate your honesty about everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Very gracious.
Aw, you're sweet. See ya. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate all of you and your feedback. So please keep it coming. Keep the questions coming and the comments and the reviews. I so appreciate it. Of course, you can reach me at micro-empires.com. And now I've added a tab on the website called Ready to Invest. And that is a place you can go and you can fill out a form. And it simply is a form of where you are in your life right now, what investments you might be interested in, what level you might be interested in. There is no obligation. This is just an opportunity for you to give me your information, and I'll add you to a list as I come upon opportunities that I will be raising capital for myself. I will include you, and you can take a look at that. And my goal is to have many opportunities, large and small, across a variety of different investments. So please fill that out. Understand there's no obligation, but it just gives me an opportunity to see you and find out more about you. Have a great day.